On October 25th, we're coming back to Melbourne for our first physical MLOps event. Whether you are just starting in the MLOps journey, improving in that space, or whether you have thousands of models in production, this event is for you. The type of things we're going to cover is MLOps for scale, and that scale can be number of models or the number of people in the team, or the number of prediction and inferences that need to be made in an hour or a minute or a second. So how to create effective MLOps for all those scenarios. We're going to cover MLOps processes and team structures. How do we organize ourselves and the talent that we have in our organizations for better results in MLOps? We're going to be looking at creating efficient and effective MLOps pipelines in an end-to-end. What does the data look like, the feature stores, all the way to the model deployment, serving, monitoring, alerting, etc. We're also going to cover getting a C-level buy-in and support for the investment in this area. We're going to be covering what governance and good management looks like in this space. So wherever you are in your journey, the MLOps event in Melbourne on October 25th is going to help you increase the maturity of MLOps in your organization. I hope you can join us. See you then.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project-focused data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, this is Felipe Flores. Welcome to Data Futurology. Today we have an extra special guest. Gina Papush is sitting down with us today. She has amazing experience, career trajectory, spending almost 3 decades where she's been Global Chief Data Analytics Officer for 2 of the largest companies in the world, QBE and later on Cigna. And she is one of the executives that I really admire. I love spending time with her. I always learn so much in speaking with her. And we have her today on the show, which I'm super excited about. Gina, welcome. Thank you so much. How are you going today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And you're very kind. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. I know I've been trying to do this for a while and, just waiting to get right into it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I know that in your in the roles and the responsibilities that you've had throughout your career, you've always been able to merge a few different areas, which I wanted to ask you about, and about maybe the evolution of those areas and how they came together. And they are the data space that back in the day it was almost the realm of technology. Now it's a different business. Then analytics. AI as the growth over the last couple of decades, and then digital. It's such an important component to everyone's lives today. How have you seen those come together in organizations? And then we can talk about take it from there.
So it's a broad topic. I think I've been fortunate enough to work for a number of different organizations, and I came into the space through the analytics field. I am a math and stat major by training, and I started out as a model builder. I mean, we call it data sciences today, but back then we didn't have a term. I've definitely dated myself now. And, what I learned is, you can actually be impactful in the field of predictive modeling and analytics if you didn't know how to code. Fortunately, I did coding as an undergrad, so, was pretty hands-on. And I always worked with folks in technology. And that afforded me the opportunities to learn about the technology and learn about data. I think what we're seeing today is it's sort of a bifurcated effect of we used to be generalists. We did a lot of coding ourselves. We built model ourselves. We put our data together ourselves. We even wrote production code ourselves. And my technology partners may not have been very happy about that, but they would let me run it. And then, that has split up into lots of specializations where, to your point, data had gone into the domain of technology very heavily. Predictive modeling has, often sat in different parts of the business, sometimes in technology, but separate team usually. Data science, has evolved into machine learning, and now we've got sometimes separate teams doing AI, right? And it's sort of a real intersection of computer science, data science, and other skill sets, all the way to behavioral psychology, right? But in specializing so much, I think we've become a little disjoint. And what is happening now is we're now bringing the specialists back in, right? And saying, hey, we can't actually do all these things in silos. Digital, to your point, has emerged in different industries and different times. We were doing digital work in consumer banking, back 15 years ago, because we were building the websites and enabling some of the business processes that are consumer facing back then. When I was a consultant in the early 2000s, we were doing digital work and parsing the log files. And I was working with some brilliant technologists who wrote all sorts of database code that was doing that. And we were bringing it together for analytics. So you could say digital's 20 plus years old, but again, used to be a separate skill set, a mix of engineering and a mix of people who were doing customer research and all sorts of work that oriented towards marketing and experience. Now we're again seeing the merge of that because digital has become an analytically driven discipline. So I think we're at a very interesting junction because these disciplines require specialization, but we also need them to work together in order to actually deliver the value they promise.
So true, so true, and what a journey! I definitely have noticed some similarities there, or some of the same things in when we bifurcated as into different specialties. And in the analytics domain, there was different areas that had, for example, different terminology for the same things, almost speaking different languages. If you're comparing, say, econometrics with psychology and statistics, and then
computer science.
Correct, right? Yes, yes. And now starting to come together, we're creating our translation dictionaries and starting to agree on single terms, and it's definitely increasing the collaboration and the competency and the value that we can create together. So that's really really exciting. And how do you? One of the things that I really admire about you, and I have to ask, is that you're able to have such a broad skill set and remit, but in each of the domains that you have, you know it quite deeply, and that is very apparent in your questions, in your suggestions, in your collaboration with your teams, the way you work together. How is it that you have both the breadth and depth?
Well, you're being very generous. I probably have more depth in some areas, more so than others, but I think I've just been incredibly fortunate to have the opportunities and to work in different areas. And when you do, you kind of got two choices. You can either rely on others to be the experts, or you can learn from them. And I just love to learn. So that's part of who I am and part of my personality. And even, when I do work, when I'm supposed to be advising, I think I've learned as much from you and your colleagues at Honeysuckle as, hopefully I brought to the table, because you guys have a very unique and different, market dynamic in Australia versus what we have in the US. And for me to even be helpful to you guys, I have to understand that context. So I think it's just all about being curious and learning, and always assuming there is more to it than you know. And as long as I keep that, I think it keeps me, somewhat fresh and helpful.
Yeah, Definitely. Yeah, extremely helpful. So definitely, that's the case. And I wanted to ask you, in your journey, as you were saying, you started as a modeler, and now have had multiple global CDAO roles. What So I wanted to ask you about your professional development and your career trajectory during that time. What were some of the when you look back, what would be some of the stages that you see in your career, and how did you go from one stage to the next? How did you
Yeah.
develop yourself professionally?
I have to confess, I wasn't very deliberate about it. I think some of this happened through the virtue of having the opportunities to work with incredible people. And I was lucky to get that exposure. And, I had really amazing leaders and mentors that I was working with. And I think the other part of it is I always strive to understand the bigger picture. So even as a modeler, and, I was very lucky to work with a manager early in my career who had taught me to think beyond the technical aspects of it and to understand the problem we were solving. And that approach has stayed with me throughout the years. But as a modeler, I was always looking to understand, what are we solving? Who is this going to help? What is the business process around it? Was it the customer experience that results from things we do? And, as I learned more about the business, I also worked for companies that urged their people to move around and learn different parts of the business. And as I broadened that perspective, I realized I was really enjoying solving broader business problems. And modeling is definitely a component of that, but you start thinking about all the other pieces and how you can, contribute beyond just building a model. And so at some point, very grudgingly, I had to give up model building because I wanted to do all this other stuff. So if you think of those stages, I grew up as a modeler, very technical skill set. I went into consulting, still in that type of work, but I worked across multiple industries. That was a great stage where I was learning broadly and doing work for very different types of companies, different business models. And I learned a bunch of technology from some phenomenal guys at Fulcrum Analytics. And then I went back into the corporate side, but then I went into a somewhat broader role where I was doing more than modeling. The way that models are deployed, the way that broader strategic analysis is done has become part of the role. And then from there, I grew into the CDAO role, and I always value having the data and the analytics. The two bring the real impact together.
That's that's where the magic is, right? In
Yes.
the combination of the two.
The hard work is there too.
100%. So it's interesting. You started very technical, as you mentioned. You had a period of time where you were learning business, learning different business models, business drivers, etc. But the other component, which I find really interesting in your approach, is that you have a real human approach to analytics and to business, so that in your approach, you always think about the individual that's getting the service or the benefit at the end of this long and complicated chain. Sometimes there's always a person, and that I find
Yes.
that you're really good at focusing on that, on who is the person that we're making a difference in their life for. Where did that come from for you, and how has that helped you in your career?
I think you and I, by the way, have that in common. I know you subscribe to that philosophy too. I think some of that is, what I was taught early on, right, by people I worked with who, and, it's happened to me at different stages. One of my, great leaders, had a tendency to ask, so what, very often, because the so what in our work is, it sort of stumps you. You come in and you've done all this great modeling work, and you want to tell them about all the technical complexities and all the caveats. And my boss was very, very smart and very, very technical. but he would always pull me back and say, look, this is all great. This is great work. So what are we going to do with it? How is it going to have an impact? And once you start thinking about how it's going to have an impact, I've carried that lesson with me, right? You trace it down to where, it's ultimately being applied, right? And who is on the receiving end. And to your point, on the receiving end is always a person, whether it's a customer, whether it's a representative of your client, whether it's your own employee who's taking this intelligence, supposed to do something with it, right? But have you had an experience where you've called the company for service and you're talking to a bot that's sending you around in circles? I'm constantly reminded of what we need to do better when that happens to me.
Yes. I really like that that mindset and that approach, because you're extending the definition of impact, or extending how impact is measured and thought upon, because you're right that sometimes in analytics, in our line of work, sometimes we enjoy the modeling so much that we forget about the downstream impacts, right, or don't give it enough attention. And then sometimes when we do, some people may focus on the financial impact, which is a good next step, but taking it to the impact on the individual, I think is where you get the full visibility. What do you think?
I totally agree with that, because ultimately you can trace any P&L impact back to your customers and your clients, right? And it goes beyond P&L. In healthcare, you have a lot of impact that's intangible, right? You can't easily measure it, or you can, but it's going to take years to measure it. But in the end of the day, if you are able to change someone's behavior and they seek medical care when they have a problem sooner, and therefore bigger problems can be prevented, right? And, you get a better health outcome. The person is healthier, they're back on their feet, hopefully sooner if they had something serious, and we've made their life better, and we've, done it more efficiently through the system. Everybody wins, right? The P&L alone is not going to always tell you the full story. The other metrics alone won't. Got to come together.
Love it. That's great. Thank you. I want to ask you your thoughts in about the evolution of the CDAO role over time, and your thoughts on maybe on the expectations of the role. I find that I remember saying a few years ago a Harvard Business Review article that said that there's almost like seven different types of CDAOs, and that sometimes there's people that focus on cost cutting, sometimes people focus on growth, sometimes there's a data entrepreneur that is about making money from the data, and others focus on risk management, etc. And there's so many different approaches to the role that I find that the almost the umbrella is quite kind of segmented underneath, and it's still, maybe I want to get your thoughts, but it almost feels like it's being still defined within the organization and the culture. What do you think about that? How have you seen it evolve? What are your thoughts in this space?
This is a fascinating topic, right? If you think back, this role didn't exist not that long ago, right? My very good friend and colleague, Peter Sirenita, was one of the first CDOs, and he recently announced his retirement. So I want to give him a shout out here. And he got so much recognition for what he's done for those of us in the field, because Peter's been one of the first thought leaders on this, and probably of the most established CDOs. And Peter would be probably the first to tell you that this role grew out, on the risk and data side. And, if you think of how many of us came into the field, I'm probably not typical for that. But, it was a defensive role in many ways, right? Because we needed to do things with data in response to regulatory requests. We needed to do things with data because we needed to put governance and controls around it. And we didn't necessarily look at this role as a value creator. I think the most exciting thing that's happened is this role has evolved into a value creator. This role has evolved into more than just regulatory governance and compliance. And it may sit in different parts of the organization. Sometimes you have a separate data role and a separate analytics role. Sometimes they come together, which gets me excited because I see them as very synergistic, of course. But I think by and large, this role is now viewed as more of commonly needed role in the organization, and it's viewed as a value creator that's part of enabling business growth, part of enabling the better consumer or client experience, part of enabling better predictability in the business, right? And so it's evolved beyond solving the data problems. They haven't gone away. Interestingly enough, we've been tackling them for a long time, right? And then, of course, we've invented all sorts of new titles and terminology. So we have chief data science officers now and chief AI officers, but by and large, we're all working in this field.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. There's many things that I want to ask you about there. One of them is the let me think how I can best ask my question, but I love that you would use the word enable, that we're there to enable business growth and alignment to the business purpose. And so I want to kind of hone in into that word enable, if that makes sense, for two reasons. One is that I find or feel, and I'd love to get your thoughts, is that as people progress in their career, they go from a very technical to more a business leader. And I find that there's almost a gap that we have in developing our people to allow them to be very effective once they become a leader. And I think that one of the blind spots for a lot of people in their professional development is the amount of collaboration and communication and change management almost that we need to help drive throughout the organization to be able to enable change really in the best way that we can. How do you find that space, that responsibility of the CDAO and analytics leaders of having to influence and work across the organization, because the initiatives that we do are organizational wide or need to be organizational wide for us to create the value that we can?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I bet you're living this every day. I love how you called out the change. I mean, we are the change agents. I think that's the nature of what we do. We're in the field that it constantly evolves. If we build great models or created great data structures, within a short period of time, we know we can make them better, right? And in fact, if we don't do that, the competitive edge that creates goes away because everybody is pushing the envelope, right? So there is constant movement forward. And so I think you hit on the first thing, really well. We have to view ourselves as change agents. We're not there just to build and maintain. We're there to constantly evolve. The second aspect of that is we have to be influencers and partners, right? And some of us in these roles, have the P&L responsibilities and actually own some sort of an external, product set and, are growing the business that way. And I think, those have really exciting jobs. But even those folks and many of us, just have a responsibility of enabling the business internally. And enabling doesn't mean passive. It means proactive driving of ideas, proactive ways to offer up what we do that can make the business better and help our stakeholders and customers have a better experience. And being able to bring that thought leadership to the table in a partnership setting, being able to turn that idea into something that actually drives actions and collaborate. So it actually goes all the way to the last mile, right, where it gets used. And that influence and skill is important. That thought leadership is paramount. And I think it puts a lot of requirements on us in the field, right? We have to have the technical skills. We have to have the skills that are technical in the data science field, in the technology field, in the analytics field, and then we have to really, really know the business. I think that last one, I mean, without business context, I think we can't have the same impact. So I think all of that is, we've evolved in asking our people to do a great deal. But that's what makes this space so exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is so exciting. That's so interesting. And I wanted to ask you also about the value of data, and particularly how much of a focus do organizations have, or should they, in having unique data sets and having an approach where they're building so strategic data assets that allow them to differentiate in the market and create different products and services. What are your thoughts in this space in terms of how much focus and maybe what type of approaches you've seen work?
It's a really interesting question. I think there is no debate that there is value in information, right? And what I think, we all recognize, data by itself doesn't generate value. It's putting the data into some sort of an intelligent form where it drives decisions, drives actions, and drives outcomes that ultimately enables value creation. What's challenging about that is it depends on which stage, right, you're at in terms of your analytic advancement and how you turn that information into intelligence. For example, if you're coming into a firm that hasn't done a lot with the information they have, they may not be ready to all sorts of unique data sets, internal or external. They are looking to get the low-hanging fruit, right, from the core set of information that's at their fingertips. But as you progress that and you've used up some of your core data sets and gotten the value realization from that, then you move to the next level and say, okay, what would make what I do uniquely different, and how could I actually move the needle beyond what everyone is doing? So once you get to a level of parity, or once you play in a commoditized field, the value of unique information goes up exponentially, right? So when I was in financial services, we actually had a team within our team, and their job day in and day out was to scour sources of new information, scout them out, test them out, figure out if they're going to add value, in what form they're going to add value, whether the models are going to become more predictable and precise, whether we would have the information more timely, whether we would improve the accuracy, all of those considerations. And we had people who had the fun jobs of constantly evaluating new sources of data and figuring out how to make use of them. So I'm a big fan of always being out there looking for the next thing.
I love it. That's excellent. Thank you so much. And what do you think is some of the next stages of evolution in our field and in this space? Maybe I'll pose the question broadly, and then we can dive into some of those topics.
So I think it varies by industry. I think for us in healthcare, which is where I spent my most recent few years, there is so much amazing information we don't make use of fully, right? And depending on where you sit in the healthcare value chain, the access to that information differs. But from an interoperability standpoint, where all the different players in that ecosystem are able to share the information, and we're able to put it to work and make sure that we have the best information in the hands of the doctor, the best timely information about the patient that drives those improved decisions. I mean, to me, that's a huge opportunity. We're scratching the surface. We really haven't brought that together, right, to get the full picture of the patient and to have the timely information exchanges between providers, labs, right, and payers and others who are involved. So for me, that's where the huge opportunity lies. I mean, I don't know how you guys, felt about it in Australia. We in the US experienced it during COVID. I mean, we were in a data nightmare during COVID, right? It's, we didn't even have things coded in the basic source, which was claims. Now we're in a different place and, there's much better information that's available, but there's still a lot of gaps. And so I think in healthcare, we've got this whole frontier of data exchange and interoperability and being able to bring data together in a timely fashion from all the different touch points the patient has and put that in the hands of people who are delivering care, right? In other industries, I'm sure it's all very different. For us, digital sources are going to be huge. Consumers are interacting with us digitally, right? In the health space, there is a ton of information that's coming through digital sources, not just websites, right? Electronic medical records, lab records, all of that is digitized oftentimes, and taking advantage of that and making all this information available timely, I think that would be huge. And that's one example. I'm sure other industries have similar but different views.
But I think that that resonates so much. I think yes, it's that's exactly what we need, and it's so exciting to hear it described like that. And I think additionally, your other good point is that as we've matured as an industry, we have approaches and developments that start to become more industry specific. And I think that maybe 10 or 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, the approach of analytics in an organization was a lot more standardized across industries. And I think that as that started to happen, some industries started taking slightly different paths depending on their unique needs. And so I think that that your observations in healthcare are spot on, and also the fact that healthcare is unique in its current state compared to other industries. And I think that for analysts and data scientists, the domain knowledge is going to continue to have such great value for us to be able to add value in organizations.
I agree. I actually think healthcare is incredibly data rich, one of the most data rich industries. But, we've also not historically invested in this type of capabilities, right? So therein lies a challenge. We're data rich and intelligence poor, right?
That's it.
If you think of, right. But in other industries, I mean, if you think about companies moving into metaverse and Web3, I mean, there is data there, immense amounts of data streaming, right, in real time. We're nowhere near that, I think, yet in healthcare. And so I think their data future looks totally different. They're figuring out how to process these massive amounts of data and distill it into, what drives the right actions in that context. The technologies that underpin it can be used across industries. It's, to your point, how you apply it in the industry. And, it does require sort of a different approach, recognizing where we are.
Yeah, definitely. And I love your perspective on bringing the data sources together, make it more interoperable in the industry. And I wanted to ask you, as an extension of that, how do you think that a broader or maybe bigger digital play will start to affect this when we start to think about devices bringing in information from wearables and measuring people sort of in their home automatically, but then also in interactions with the patients? How do you think that's going to start to shape what we can do?
I think we have an enormous opportunity there to engage with the patient through the multiple channel interaction. I mean, digital can play a much bigger role. And to your point, I mean, we're doing this by video across the world. There is no reason this should be any different for someone who wants to talk to their doctor, right? And it's starting to happen. In fact, I know for a fact during COVID, video conference with your doctor became, pretty normal experience, but we didn't imagine that happening, right, prior to COVID on a scale that it's happened. I think your point on the devices is huge. I think, folks with chronic conditions, the monitoring that can happen, the preventive nature of what could be done if that data is streaming, right, in real time. And we've got the AI systems that can actually monitor that, pick up any kind of abnormality, notify the doctor in a timely manner, notify anyone else who needs to do something. That is huge. It happens today, but it's in a very limited scale. And I think that's a huge part of how we move healthcare to be more preventive and more interactive. Today, it's very event-driven, right? And it's very discrete. But this technology and these capabilities from an analytics and AI standpoint could make it much more seamless and continuous. But without integration and interoperability, again, it's hard to do that, right? And I don't know about you. I have friends with chronic, health conditions, and I just think how wonderful it would be if they could have that time of real-time care, right? That would be available on demand. And also, if they're not even recognizing yet, somebody with diabetes who is not recognizing that they need something, and the smart device would notify them, and if something isn't happening, send a notification to a caregiver or a doctor or somebody who needs to intervene. I mean, ultimately, I think many lives can be saved and many lives can be improved through that. So the promise is huge.
And yeah, I love that you've been working on making this promise a reality, which is amazing. I know that we're running out of time, but I do have to ask you about some of your extracurricular activities and where you give back to the community, and it's something that I know is so important to you, very near and dear to your heart. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing in that space?
Well, I think we can never do enough of it, but I thank you for recognizing that, and I'm really passionate about helping people who come into this field and giving them ways to learn and experience things. I was fortunate to have mentors, so I look for ways to provide that in whatever format it takes. You do this amazing podcast, and thank you again. It's an honor to be part of it, and I'm sure you're contributing a great deal for people who are coming into the field, and they get exposure and get to hear what happens and think about their career paths. In particular, I'm a female in this field, and there are quite a few of us. And I was fortunate to grow up in a family where I've had women of older generations, my grandmothers, my aunts, my mother, who are all in various types of technical roles, scientists, finance professionals, engineers. And so I had that exposure at a young age, and I was encouraged to do that. And my sister and I both ended up in this field. She's a computer scientist, and I have a daughter. And one of the things that, was really, really unexpected for me when she decided to pursue this career and went to grad studies. And, there were very few women in her excellent program. It made me realize that not a ton has changed since, I pursued this, and, quite a few years later, she did. So I try to contribute in various ways to women in STEM, and participate in different types of events, or do whatever I can to encourage women to come and do this work. This work is really fun, and also to support them on that journey.
Amazing. I think that is that is phenomenal. And as you said, the more we can have of that, the better. I'm a dad of 2 young daughters, and I hope that they can be encouraged, and yes, I see them hopefully interested in this space, looking up to people like you, and then finding the eagerness and the motivation to jump into this exciting field as well.
Now that's excellent. And I'm sure just like my daughter had the benefit of a father who supported her, and I had the same. And I'm sure your girls will grow up with that, whatever they decide to do later in life, right? But it's just that the support of man, in all sorts of roles is critically important, critically important. I've had wonderful mentors who were men and women. So I think, all of us can contribute there.
I love that. That is true. All of us can contribute there. So that is excellent. And I think that is a wonderful note to end on. Gina, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. This has been amazing hearing your insights, your perspectives, your knowledge, your experience. It is world class, and we wanted to make this extra special. This is our 200th episode of Data Futurology, so it's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Felipe. It's an honor, and you do amazing work, and it's just such a pleasure to be a guest. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.